Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Orbit Football Podcast. We're breaking down college football once again here on this fine day. Cade Williamson, your host, joined with my co-host, Tyler the Doc Stevens. We're back in session today. We wrapped up earlier in the week. Week one, couple games that went down in week one. So now we're moving on to week two. We're giving our preview. We're heading into this week. Obviously, we gave our top 25s. We just got released, the AP top 25s. We got those to us. And first off, I want to get your response on how you think that ranking is. And I believe Florida State ended up moving up, what was it, to 4 in the AP ranking? They got Alabama at 3, I think is what I saw. Yeah. So that's a little interesting there, something to note on. But we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about a couple games this week, 10 games this week. Obviously, got to flash it back to last week when you looked at myself and Tyler's week one picks. I believe we were roughly the same if I had to go back and look at it. I know we both got our upsets wrong. I was closer than you were because Toledo almost pulled it out. Yeah, Toledo almost pulled out. You were thinking about that Texas State game.
Yeah, I was going to say, off camera, we were my two were Oregon State, San Jose State, and Baylor, Texas State. And I've been on that Texas State-Baylor game for about 2 months now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't pick it. But, you can call me a liar if you want. It's cool. But, I don't know. You were a lot closer than mine.
I was. I did have Toledo, but when you looked at it against the spreads, we both had Utah correct. I had Minnesota correct. We technically both had that one correct because you had Nebraska outright. I just had correct. TCU and Colorado, we both picked the wrong team. So we were both kind of off on that one. We both picked Ohio State. You thought Indiana would cover. Indiana did cover that game, so you got me on that one. The Washington-Boise game, we both thought that Washington was going to win and cover, so we both got that one correct there. Houston defeats UTSA. That line was at plus 1.5 for Houston. Obviously, they won 17-14. A lot less points than both me and you thought was going to be in that ball game, but we both got that one correct. Penn State, we both said were to cover. They did, although right there at the end, I was only 2 points off of getting that score prediction perfect. Just that 2-point conversion from West Virginia messed me up, but we did both pick South Carolina. They did lose. You picked Florida State, and obviously LSU was favored in that game. You got that game right over me, and you also picked Duke over Clemson. You got that one right. You picked Duke at 28 points too, so you had a pretty solid week. Yes, you did. You said 28-25 Duke over Clemson, so you had a pretty solid week over the picks. The only one I really got over you was just the Minnesota game, where everything else we were roughly the same, or you had over me. So you take the victory in those standings for week one.
And I believe on Saturday you might have been talking a little trash about your picks, huh, buddy?
I was.
Sunday and Monday came around, and I had to pull ahead.
I was feeling good. I thought LSU was going to pull it out. Obviously, they didn't. Duke and Clemson. I knew that game was going to be close. I said Duke was going to cover. That game, though, wasn't exactly that close. Granted, the game was close, and Duke just piled it on a little bit late there, but still, Duke won that game 28-7, obviously won that game. I had him to cover, but you had him outright, so you take the victory in week one. So let's hop right into it, get it to week two. We'll talk about, there's really only one Thursday night game. We aren't going to talk about that one, but there is one game on Friday that has both of our interests. And me specifically, because of the blackout uniforms that the home team is going to be wearing, the Kansas Jayhawks. They're going with that throwback World War II style logo on the helmet, but with the whole blackout uniform, as they will be hosting Illinois. Obviously, I picked Illinois as my team to be upset in week one. They almost were, just a little late game heroics helped them out there. But what are we thinking about Illinois-Kansas on that Friday night?
So I think this is a pretty big week for both squads, both 1-0. Kansas took care of Missouri State. If you think back to last year, Missouri State, I believe, was the team that almost beat Arkansas. Kind of led most of that game, and Arkansas ended up pulling it out at the end. But I don't think they're not a team to scoff by at just because they're an FCS squad. But Kansas obviously rolled with Jason Bean, not Jalen Daniels last week due to, I believe, injuries.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Whether he will be back or not this week, I think that's pretty big. Obviously Jason Bean did get playtime for a lot of last season, but I think Jalen Daniels and his playmaking ability and overall just talent is going to be huge for Kansas to have, and whether they are going to have it or not, I'm not really for sure. I'm not in tune with the inside knowledge at Kansas, but I think this game will be Kansas's game anyway. I like Kansas. I think I had them 6th or 7th in my Big 12, but I was a lot higher on the Big 12 before Week 1 was played. And
Yeah.
I think
Uh,
it wasn't a great week for the conference, but
you can say that again.
so going back to Jalen Daniels, it looks like he's actually been getting a lot of reps in this week's practice, so hopefully that looks up for him. But yeah, I think Kansas is going to win anyways. I think that offense under Lance Leopold is going to be able to get it done, and I'm going to take Kansas to cover. I'm going to go 35. Actually, no, we'll bump it down. We'll go 31-14.
Okay. I'm liking that score. I'm liking that range there. I think that Kansas, like you said, I'm pretty high on Kansas too. I'm about the same where you are. I have them finishing about middle of the pack in the Big 12 again, having a decent season. Obviously, Jalen Daniels was a very solid quarterback last year, and Jason Bean, obviously, he did get, as you mentioned, some solid playing time, especially down the stretch of that season. I believe they used both of them in that TCU game last year, which was on FS1, that noon kick, which was a very exciting game to watch. Kansas, unfortunately, couldn't pull it out. But Kansas was really about 3 one-score games from being a 9-3 football team. And they were right there. They fell to pieces down the stretch of the season. Things just did not go their way. And they had to face a really tough schedule, obviously. They had to go face Kansas State with, Adrian Martinez, Will Howard, and Deuce Vaughn, as well as a very solid defense. Kansas State they won the Big 12 last year, obviously. They had to go face Texas. Texas is a tough team. I mean, they're going to be tough. It's Texas. Not to mention, the bowl game and that thriller against Arkansas and KJ Jefferson they couldn't pull out. But when I look at this team, I obviously, like you said, they struggled out the gate against Missouri State last week. Came out a little bit better, actually a lot better in that second half against Missouri State. So I'm going to agree with you. Now, I think Illinois will get a little bit more offense rolling. That offense didn't look too great, but part of me thinks they could not really run the ball. I mean, their leading rusher in that game against Toledo was their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, the Ole Miss transfer. And that's a bit of a concern for me. And I mean, they just barely squeaked by Toledo. So what are they going to do when they face Kansas? I think that Kansas wins. I'm going to go a little bit more convincing, though. I'm going to go 38. I'm going to go 38-9. 38-9, I'm picking Kansas over Illinois. I don't think that Illinois scores an offensive touchdown. I think that all of their points come from field goals. And, just because that offense looked pretty sluggish. I think Luke Altmaier will drive them down the field, but I think that they're just going to stall out inside the red zone. But that's for our Friday pick. So now let's get to the big games on Saturday. Obviously, there's a lot of games to run down, a lot of good storylines to run down to talk. And let's talk about before we get to the big one that's at noon. That's the big noon game. Let's talk about a game between really a team that's in the ACC and a team that's affiliated with the ACC, and a team that didn't look the best in Week 1. And that's Notre Dame and NC State. I'm talking about NC State not really exactly looking the best. Not that UConn isn't, a decent program. Obviously, they made a bowl. They did make a bowl game, yes. But, a lot of thoughts of that UConn program is that it's just in the mud and it is not, a viable program at the Division I FBS level. But, I mean, they gave NC State a little run for their money. It was a sloppy game on NBC or CBS Sports Network there. I believe it was that Thursday night kick. It was one of those early games around the 7 o'clock, 7:30 window. But this time at noon on ABC, down in Raleigh, Notre Dame has to travel down there. I don't know if this is it could be marked as the first test for Notre Dame. I mean, obviously they steamrolled Navy in Week 0 actually over in Ireland, and then in Week 1 they took care of business at home against Tennessee State. But now they got to go face a Power 5 team. How do you think that the Irish are gonna fare against NC State in the Wolfpack?
So if we're going to go back to that NC State game against UConn, it was actually on the road for them, so maybe just a little bit coming slow out of the start. But this is going to be the home opener. It's going to be a packed crowd, if not sold out. And honestly, if you look at their stats, they, kind of just did their thing really against UConn. I mean, this team is just basically going to be, can Brennan Armstrong look, good enough to beat a defense like Notre Dame? 17 for 26, 155 yards. Not great, really. He was also their leading rusher so he had 96 yards, and their leading rusher after him had 57. So
Yeah.
also just going to have to spread around the ball, be able to actually run with your running backs and, let Brennan Armstrong actually be able to throw the ball. Because we've seen him at Virginia. He can throw the ball at a very efficient level. And also their leading receiver, only 36 yards. So really it's just going to come down to, is their offense going to be good enough? And we've seen Notre Dame, although they have not played, they played Navy and Tennessee State. They've put up 42 and 56 points. Yeah. So we are going to see, I believe, probably the best offense for Notre Dame in quite a bit. This is... It's going to be an impressive team to watch offensively, and I just don't think people really see that from Notre Dame in the past years. And it's going to all come on Audric Estime. Is he going to be able to continue to pound the ball with that front? Obviously, left tackle, NFL prospect, the best tackle in the class as of right now, Joe Alt. Is he going to be able to, is that offensive line just going to be able to manhandle an NC State front that's been, considerably tough? They've put quite a bit of NFL talent from that front seven in the actual draft, and players have succeeded from these teams. So one thing to watch is going to be the just receivers for both teams. I think that's probably the biggest questions about both of these teams, especially Notre Dame, with how young they're going to have to rely on to get things done. I think Notre Dame does win this game, but I actually do think NC State's going to cover 7.5 points.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm going to go 30-24 Notre Dame.
Okay.
I do think that Notre Dame is going to be out in front for most of this game, but I don't think they're ever going to put NC State away.
So we're talking maybe possibly backdoor cover here from NC State down the stretch of the game.
I don't know if backdoor cover. I just think that they're just going to be, you're going to know that Notre Dame is just slightly ahead for sure.
Okay. See, I have those same gripes that you do about Notre Dame. Obviously, they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be very solid up front. Audric Estime, I've said this multiple times. I think he's one of, if not the best power running back in the country. I think he is. Really a bygone rusher that what he is, because he's a guy that just barrels over you and gets his yards. And I think he's going to give some defenses fits, and I think he's going to give this NC State defense some fits. He's had a great start of the season, but obviously a lot of the talk around Notre Dame right now is Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman has had some decent experience in the past of facing NC State there at Wake Forest. Those two teams, when he looked at it in the 2021 season, both of them were very close to possibly getting. Obviously, Wake Forest ended up making the ACC championship game, but both of those teams were in a conversation of, maybe if one of them catches fire in the next season in 2022, they could make the playoff. Obviously, both teams had very high aspirations, and they both finished 7-5 in the regular season. It was not the greatest season for both NC State and Wake Forest, but I think that Sam Hartman, now that he's at Notre Dame, he's looked very good in the first 2 weeks. He hasn't had to do too much either with Notre Dame. He's just playing his brand of football, and that's what I like about him. And obviously, like we said, this is their first test. It's their first true road game. But I think that they cover. I think that Notre Dame has this game. I think I agree with your statement where they're out in front for a majority of this ball game. I do agree with that. I don't know. Like you said, Brennan Armstrong, he's I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see out of that in that offense for NC State. Like you said, 155 passing yards in week one against, UConn. And I understand UConn made a bowl. I understand that, but it's UConn. It's still UConn, in my opinion. You're a Power 5 team at NC State. You should be defeating that team with a little bit. And I understand it's a road game as well, but you should be. That game was 24-14 final. Yes. And for that reason, I'm going to go Notre Dame, and I think that they cover this ball game. I think that they're going to win. I like the sentiment of them putting up about 30 points. I'm going to go 34-17. I think Notre Dame beats NC State. That's what I'm going to go for the final of that game. Give me the Irish.
And one thing about that game, if there is going to be a weakness on Notre Dame's defense, it will be their secondary. So Correct. It'll be interesting Correct. To see how Robert Ney, and obviously offensive coordinator at Syracuse last year and was with Brennan Armstrong at Virginia 2 years ago. So we're going to see if they can get things cooking. Maybe they were just kind of holding face and they're going to show
Yeah.
their true offense this week. Should be a
That could be-
fantastic game because
that
NC
could be
State,
true.
Notre Dame, both obviously defensively, they're just going to be great. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm a lot more excited actually about this game, and I think a lot more people are because I think we could really see a fantastic ball game.
Yeah, I think it has the qualities to shape up to be a very good ball game. But the ball game right now that a lot of people have circled, and really the football team that a lot of people have circled after Week 1, the Colorado Buffaloes. Coach Prime Deion Sanders marched them into Fort Worth, Texas, took down the reigning national championship runner-ups, the TCU Horned Frogs. Marched them down there, took the victory in their home stadium, 45-42, a thriller of a ball game down there on Big Noon, and Big Noon's going right back to covering Colorado. But this week they're going out to Folsom Field, and Colorado will be hosting Nebraska. Now we both talked about these teams last week and talked about their games last week. We both were wrong about Colorado. I had Minnesota beat Nebraska. You had Nebraska beating Minnesota. So after Week 1, what are we seeing from these two teams, and how do we think that this game is going to fare up?
I think this game is actually going to be pretty interesting because I think we're going to see one of two things. We're going to see that either Minnesota was very great defensively, and Nebraska is going to be able to open up their offense, or we're going to see that Colorado is just a really good football team. I know they did beat TCU, and I don't want to discredit for them because that was obviously a huge win for that program, but it's just a thing where I want to see it happen again, you know?
Yeah.
Nebraska, going back to them, Jeff Sims only threw 19 passes, and he was their leading rusher. He did not look too hot. He was a one-read quarterback. He snapped the ball. He looked at his first read, and if it was not there, then he was taking off and running.
Yep.
So is Colorado going to be able to hone in on that? Are they going to be able to stop that? Are they going to be able to run, Nebraska? Are they going to be able to run? Because Jeff Sims, 91 yards on 19 carries, and after that, a combined 18 carries for, 83 yards between their two leading rushers, Gabe Ervin and Anthony Grant. So, not great. This offense I am a little worried about, and with Colorado's offense, obviously they put up 45. Was it against a questionable TCU defense? Yes, but does it matter at this point? Nope, because this is all we know of Colorado right now. Shedeur Sanders is going to be the second best player in this game behind the best player possibly in the nation, Travis Hunter. I'm actually going to take Colorado. I do think they get it done. I like what they're going to be able to do with Sean Lewis. I think if anyone's going to be able to break down a good defense and, have to make Nebraska score 20 plus to beat you, I just think it's a good recipe for Colorado. I'm actually going to go a little bit lower scoring. I think this game could be potentially more boring than I think people are going to, want. I think this game could be a little disappointing in some people's eyes, because it's not, another 45-42 shootout. But I'm actually going to go 25-17, kind of a weird score. But I think Colorado is going to be able to win this game. I do think that their crowd is going to play a huge difference because when was the last time someone's had to go into Colorado?
Exactly.
And they're it's going to be a hell game for them.
It's going to be. It's going to be a tough atmosphere.
So,
it is.
I actually think Colorado is going to get it done. I know I was not high on this team, but I just think they have a good recipe to get it done. And Nebraska's offense, I just don't think is going to be enough to take down this Buffalo defense.
Yeah, I think you bring up some very solid points there. But one thing that I find the most interesting is last week, Nebraska against Minnesota. Minnesota, a very newer ball club that probably stuck to the ground game a bit more. They only allowed 55 yards on the ground to Minnesota. I mean, and only 196 passing yards through the air. Now, I understand that Minnesota's offense is a lot lower than Colorado's high-flying offense with Sean Lewis at the helm as the offensive coordinator is going to be. I understand that. But still, Colorado could not run the ball against TCU. So how are they going to be able to run the ball against Nebraska? That's what concerns me, is that if Nebraska can just key in on the passing game of Colorado, I think it might give the Buffaloes fits. And like you said, Jeff Sims, though, I'll talk the opposite way. He was a one-read quarterback when you're going against a team with, I would say, a pretty solid secondary. I mean, there's some decent names in that secondary for Colorado. Obviously, Travis Hunter, who had 2 interceptions last week against Chandler Morris. But if he's making a quarterback like Chandler Morris look silly, how's he going to make a guy like Jeff Sims look about the same? I think that, like you said, I think that this game is going to be a little bit more disappointing. I think it's going to be. I could see Colorado honestly blowing out Nebraska. I could see that happening. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout though. I think it will be. I think Colorado, like you said, I wasn't as high on them either. I thought that they had a chance to beat TCU. I was still questioning that offense of TCU, and obviously the big questions on that team was the defense. Nebraska, obviously a better unit defensively, but I think that Colorado will have struggles with running the football. I think they're going to stick to almost an air raid style of an offense. I think it'll be close into halftime. I think it might even be in the favor of Nebraska and the teens at halftime. But I think that Colorado comes out of the half, and I think that they separate themselves from the Cornhuskers. And I'm going to go Buffaloes in the victory. I just think that Jeff Sims has 2 or 3 really, really bad turnovers, and I think maybe 2 or 3 of them are to Travis Hunter. If I were him, I would not throw a pass his entire way this upcoming game. I'm going to be completely honest there, but I think Colorado takes care of business at home. I think that Coach Prime leads them in, take on Nebraska, rivalry matchup. I think they get the victory. I'm going to go 34-17 again with this one. I think that, actually, no, I'm going to go 34-13. I think that the Colorado offense gets working a little bit early, but, obviously Nebraska's offense just gives me a lot of questions. I understand that Colorado let up 500-plus yards of offense, but TCU has a lot more weapons than Nebraska does. So I'm going to go 34-13. I think Colorado handily, but like I said, I think we could go into a halftime score that's like 17-13 or 17-10, or even maybe in the single digits. But I'm going to go 34-13. I think Colorado gets the win in that one. But now to a game that's a bit interesting because we highlighted this in our preview. It's 3:30 kicks, and now we're going to the 3:30 window. This game's on ESPN2. It's down in New Orleans, and the team that has to travel down there is Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has to travel down to take on the Tulane Green Wave. Tulane, obviously, last year were the American champions. Last year they got the Group of 6 bid to the New Year's Six Bowl. They took down mighty USC in the Trojans in a crazy fashion. They got that win there. Ole Miss has to march in. What are we thinking here with Lane Kiffin and the Rebels?
I'm not really sure how this game is actually gonna really go. We've seen Ole Miss absolutely piss stomp Mercer, 73-7, I believe. So that really was not close at all. And then we also seen Tulane quarterback Mr. Pratt is, I believe, the number 1 rated PFF quarterback in all of college football right now, and he had a 98 passing grade, which is about as high as you can get. So I think this is going to be a really offensive game. Tulane did only beat South Alabama 37-17, but they just took care of business. I think this game is going to be close. I'm actually, like, in my head, I really don't know who I have winning this game. Because I don't know how to really feel about it at all.
I know, because
like, so
it's hard to gauge Ole Miss because they played Mercer week 1. I mean, obviously an FCS opponent. But the other thing about, Tulane, that, they got the passing game going, but they also looked a bit shaky against South Alabama in that first half. It's a tough game. It is. It's a tough game to pick.
Yeah. If I'm going to go with anything, I'm going to be able to go with just the play calling that Lane Kiffin offers. And I'm actually going to use that against him because he is known for, obviously, wanting to pass the ball quite a lot and shoot for big plays and, plays that players can build up momentum and burst straight through a gap. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to see Tulane dominate the clock. They're going to keep that defense on the field, and I am going to take the Ole Miss upset. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Green Wave of Tulane. I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, going to this Mercer game, I know obviously against Mercer they're gonna have huge plays, but Ole Miss only had the ball for 22 minutes of that game,
Yeah.
and I think if you're going to do that, I think that if you allow Tulane to be able to run the ball on you, which they had only 142 rushing yards, but I don't think that this Ole Miss front is going to be absolutely something Tulane can't handle. And I
Yeah.
think they have a great quarterback. I think, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick Tulane. They are favored by 7. Do I think they cover? No, I do not. But I think this game is going to end 31-28. I'm going to go ahead and take the Green Wave at home, by the way.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's kind of tough to really get a gauge on these teams. It's like we said, it's early in the season after week 1, but to me personally, I kept very big notes on that Tulane game when I was looking at the game and I was keeping up with that game because they, like I said, it was close against South Alabama in the first half. I understand Ole Miss played Mercer. I understand that. But I don't know. I feel like if Ole Miss can get that run game going with Quinshon Judkins, I think it's gonna be game over for Tulane because comparatively, I understand that season to season here, but I'm gonna take a page out of the USC Tulane book. USC last year in the Cotton Bowl, USC's team, they were not a rushing football team. They were not. They were a team that was going to throw it. They were going to air raid, and obviously they scored points against Tulane. They put 45 up against them. Tulane just put up 46. I think you're right in the sense that we're going to see a lot of offense in this game. I do think you're right, and I do think that it's going to be close. I do, but I'm going to go the opposite direction. I do think Ole Miss takes care of business. Now, I don't think they cover. I do think they take care of business because I think that they're going to be able to get the run game involved. I think that the Rebels and Lane Kiffin are going to be able to use Quinshon Judkins. They're going to be able to use him very well, very efficiently in this ball game. And I think because of that reason, that's going to be the X factor in this game of why Ole Miss takes the victory over Tulane. I think that we're going to see even more offense than you predicted, though. I'm going to go a 42. I'm going to go a 42-39 final. Ole Miss beats Tulane. I think this game also could very much come down to who has the ball last. Whoever has the ball in the last possession, could it be Ole Miss driving down the field with Jackson Dark and a costly pick? It could be that. It could be Tulane marching downfield and taking a game-winning drive and winning on their home turf and beating a Power 5 opponent, an SEC opponent at that, in Ole Miss. But I'm going to go Ole Miss 42-39. I think that they beat the Green Wave of Tulane. So that was our first of a couple here that we're going to talk about with that 3:30 window. Let's talk about another one. That game is going to be on ESPN2, the Ole Miss Tulane game, but this one will be on ABC, and this one is a battle of very disappointing teams from last season, and that is Texas A&M traveling to Miami to take on the Hurricanes. Both of these teams looked pretty solid in Week 1. Miami, obviously, a lot of social media said that there was no crowd there at that game. At Hard Rock Stadium, there was no crowd. And that was their Week 1 matchup. They didn't generate very much hype on that Friday night game, but they won 38-3. Now they got to take on a top 25 opponent in Texas A&M. How are we feeling with the Jimbo Fisher versus Mario Cristobal matchup here?
I think this game is going to be completely different from last year. I believe this game ended 17-9 with quarterback play being worse than what you see at Thanksgiving between your two uncles playing. I do think we're going to see a close game, but I do think there's going to be one team that is going to really show that they are a really good squad, and that is the Texas A&M Aggies. I'm actually going to take them to win. I'm going to take them to cover. I think they are going to put up some points on this Miami defense, which is crazy to say, but I'm going to go ahead and take A&M to win 34-21. Why do I think this? I think this Texas A&M offense, yes, I know they did play New Mexico, but Connor Wegman looked fantastic. 18 for 23, 78% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 236 yards. Perfect game for him. Just kind of did what he had to do and put him away early and let Max Johnson come to the game, get some reps. He went 6 for 9, 41 yards and a touchdown. So not too shabby at all. This rushing game looked okay, I guess. 29 rushes for 134 yards. 4.6 yards per carry. But one thing that I do like about this rushing games is, yes, they did not run the ball well, but guess what? They actually wanted to pass the ball, which is something we have not been able to say about a Texas A&M offense around Jimbo Fisher. I think Bobby Petrino is going to be a pretty good hire for this squad, and I think that is why I have them in my top 25 right now. A guy to watch your eye on, Evan Stewart, very highly touted recruit for this Texas A&M team, had 8 catches for 115 yards with 2 touchdowns, did his thing, and I do think if there is going to be one thing about this Miami team that they're going to be able to do is run the ball extremely well. So how is that Texas A&M front going to be able to hold up? I think they're going to hold up just fine. Miami went 36 rushes, 250 yards for 7 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. TVD had a pretty solid game, but nothing too crazy. I think this is going to be a fascinating game to watch because I think this game could play out multiple ways, but I just think A&M has more paths to victory, and I also think they just have the better talent. So I'm going to go ahead and take A&M to win.
I'm going to agree with you here. I think that the Aggies get the job done over Miami. I don't know. I like when I look at this, I think the Texas A&M is finally. I don't know if they're turning things around fully. I don't know if they're going to be, possibly in the situation of an SEC West champion or making the SEC champ game, but you like to think that Jimbo Fisher, with the recruiting classes that they've got, that they would be competitive to win an SEC title, and I think that they're starting to find it. Obviously, like you said, Bobby Petrino leading the offense, and they looked good in week 1. Miami looked good in week 1, but I think that I'm going to agree with you. I think the Texas A&M gets the job done over Miami. At that 3:30 kick down there at Hard Rock Stadium. I think the Texas A&M, I think that they're going to score a decent amount. I think they get 30. I'm going to go 37. I'm going to go 37 to 25. I think Texas A&M gets the job done over Miami and covers in that ball game. But now we've got to talk about a rivalry matchup here in week 2, and an old-fashioned rivalry matchup at that, and that is the Cy-Hawk. 3:30 kick on Fox. Iowa travels to Iowa State for the Cy-Hawk in week 2. This one has produced some very, very interesting ball games over the past 10 or so years that have just been low-scoring slugfests. And I don't know if we're going to see anything different out of this one this year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if your grandma and grandpa love college football, this is a game to have on the TV for them. This is going to be a pretty low-scoring game. Do we have the over/under for this game? I would like to know what that is.
I'll check it real quick here. I believe
cannot be over 10 points.
It's 36.5 right now. It's the over/under for this game. It's at 36.5.
Okay. I'm going to actually go ahead and pick Iowa to win. I think their talent is a little bit too much for Iowa State. Iowa State had 116 passing yards and 134 rushing yards. Iowa had 196 passing yards. That probably set a franchise or a dynasty record if you were playing NCAA 14. And they only ran the ball for 88 yards, but that is including McNamara sack yards with -9. I don't know. This game is going to be pretty low scoring. But I think just Iowa is going to be able to out-talent them at the end of the day. I love Matt Campbell, but it has not been the greatest of the last 2 seasons. I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and pick Iowa to win. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go a little bit high scoring for this game. I'm going to go 20-14.
Interesting. Okay, so that would still not be the over. That would still hit the under. Actually, yes. Funny enough, because they'd be under 30. They'd be at 36 exactly, under 36.5. But I agree with your sentiments. I think that Iowa's just gonna. I don't know. I don't think they'll bully Iowa State. I think it will be. The final score will indicate that it's a close game. But I think that Iowa just takes care of business. Obviously, they could throw the football, which was insane for them against Utah State. I think Caden McNamara he offers something different. that we haven't seen from Iowa probably since the days of maybe, I would say probably like C.J. Beathard. And even then, that's a bit questionable. But I think that Iowa just grinds out this football game. I think they play Iowa football. I do agree with you. I think that they get into the 20-point mark. But I think that they win this ball game 20-7 over to or final. I'm going Hawkeyes 20-7 over Iowa State. I had to chew up my words there a little bit, but I think Iowa gets the job done in that ball game and wins the Cyhawk once again. But now to the game of the week. Now to the game that everybody's talking about this week. Last week it was LSU and Florida State. We're just keeping it with an SEC West squad, but this one is at home, and they are hosting the Texas Longhorns, a 7 o'clock kick on ESPN. Texas, Alabama, in Tuscaloosa. This game is very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me. It's also very interesting because Alabama they're currently a 7-point favorite in this ball game, which is something that I find a bit interesting. But last year obviously it was a fun game. It was a fun game. There was the big noon game, obviously. They're at Texas, and it went down to the wire, and Alabama kicked the field goal with under a minute left to go, and they won the ball game. But Texas, even without Quinn Ewers for a majority of that ball game, kept it close with Alabama. So what does that mean for this year if they can keep Mr. Ewers healthy for the entire game? It's an interesting dynamic. I want to know your thoughts on this game, though.
So Alabama obviously going to the murder ball approach of football, where we only seen Jalen Milroe throw 18 passes. He looked pretty good, but he didn't really have to do anything. He was very limited.
Exactly.
He had 7 carries for 48 yards. Their leading rusher was McClellan with 10 carries for 39 yards, and this is against Middle Tennessee. They looked okay running the ball, but I think they could have been definitely better. They had 40 carries for 205 yards, 5.1 per carry, which, if you're looking at it at base value, very good numbers, but we have to recognize who they were playing, and no disrespect to the Raiders, but this is not SEC talent we're talking about. It's not even Big 12 talent that we're talking about, who they're going to be going up against. And Isaiah Bond was the leading receiver, 5 catches, 76 yards, and Burton was right behind him with 3 catches, 62 yards. And if we're going to go ahead and go to the Texas side of the ball, complete different. 30 pass attempts for Quinn Ewers, 19 for 30, 3 touchdowns, 260 yards, 63% completion percentage. They ran the ball with between Jade Blue and Jonathan Brooks, 10 and 55 for Blue, 12 and 52 for Brooks. They had 158 yards on 39 carries, 4.1 average. Xavier Worthy did his thing. Obviously, behind with him was Whittington, Jatavion Sanders, and Jonathan Brooks. I'm actually, looking at this, I think Alabama is outright more talented than this Texas team when you go down on paper. But
okay.
I'm actually going to go ahead and take Texas in this game. And I know that seems kind of crazy. And I actually have Alabama ahead of Texas. I have Texas at 14. I have Alabama at, I believe, 2 or 3. And I don't know. I think if this game was played at the end of the season, Alabama wins this game outright.
I'd agree.
But if you're going to have Alabama, who is switching, their offense completely around, and you subtract Bryce Young, who really carried them through that game last season.
Yep.
I think going into this, I know Texas, they know they lost one that they should have won. And I think they know that. I think Quinn is going to want to, play really good. He played very well in that start last year until, obviously, he had to exit the game when Hudson Card came in. And Card held his own for sure, but I think Quinn in that game could have been a completely different feel to that game. When you look at Quinn Ewers, you feel that energy from him. You know you're going to get something special from him. And I know last year was kind of a disappointing, freshman, debut season for him. And I think he knows that. Texas knows that. Sarkisian knows that. I think they're going to want to come out and make a statement, and I think they're going to be able to do it. I think this game was going to be pretty low scoring. I know Alabama's 7-point favorites. I'm going to go ahead and take Texas 27 to 19. I do not think
Okay.
Alabama will crack the 20 point yard or mark, I should say. And I could be looking at this at about 11:30 on Sunday and just or Saturday, and it's like, man, that was stupid. But right now, I'm feeling Texas.
I can understand that. I really can. I mean, Texas's defense. I understand they played Rice last week, but Rice had JT Daniels, and
Right.
they only allowed 149 passing yards. But the more impressive stat from Texas's defense, they only allowed 27 rush yards against Rice last week. And when you look at the offensive styles of both of these teams, it's two opposite ways. Alabama's going to run the football. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to run the football with the big men up front, and they're going to try to bully you up front in this ball game. Texas is going to try to air it out in this ball game, and you know, I'm torn on this game now. Initially, when we did our preview, I said that Alabama was going to win this game, but just like you, I'm very torn on this game. But I think what boils down to me is, do I think Steve Sarkisian can beat Nick Saban? And do I think that he is the third Nick Saban disciple to hand him a loss? And at the end of the day, I sit there and I say no. I don't know what it is. Sark has been very much known for not being able to win the big games. That's basically his MO, is that he can't win
Really
those
winning
big
on his
games as a
own.
head coach. And yeah, exactly. Like winning not under a system that's Nick Saban, winning as a head coach. He struggled at USC. He struggled at Texas. He hasn't won a Big 12 championship with Texas, and arguably they've been the best talented program in the Big 12 for the past 5 years. I mean, and I understand you got Quinn Ewers. You've got this dude who I personally think is could be. I mean, this QB class, we've talked about it multiple times. This QB class, possibly in this NFL draft, might be the most stacked QB class ever in existence. It's going to be crazy. It just depends on who declares and who doesn't. But it even makes the Heisman race tough. I think Ewers can put his name in that race and put his name out front. But like I said last year, what killed them ultimately in the end is that they couldn't keep a quarterback healthy. Quinn Ewers obviously went down early in the second quarter of that ball game and was out for the game. Hudson Card came in, held his own, but he also was dealing with an injury and was basically playing on a bum leg. That's the other thing about that game, is that Alabama won that game and their defense did not look good. And this year, the defense is supposed to be better this year. I'm torn on this game. I'm really torn on this game. It's super tough. I think it's going to be a very close ball game. I agree that it's going to be very low scoring like last year's ball game, but I don't know, because Alabama's offense gives me a lot of questions, because I don't know how they're going to run the football with efficiency when they're going to have to pass. I don't trust Jalen Milroe. I don't. I don't trust Jalen Milroe. But at the same time, do I trust Texas? And no, I don't trust Texas, because it's Texas. But I don't know. It's a very tough game for me to pick, and it depends on what day I'm thinking. And I've thought about it this entire week. In most of the days, I think Alabama, but some days I'm thinking Texas, and I'm gonna have to go against my initial gut, even though I don't think that Sark can beat Bama. I don't think that he can beat Saban, but I just think that this is not a good matchup for Alabama right now. I understand it's in Bryant-Denny. I understand that really the only team that's beat them there over the past 5 years is LSU. I understand that. But something about last year's game where Texas, in all realities and aspects, really dominated that football game. I mean, they did. They outplayed Alabama. It's just Bryce Young is Bryce Young. Alabama doesn't have Bryce Young this year. They've got Jalen Milroe. Alabama doesn't have a tailback like Jahmyr Gibbs this year who could step up in certain situations. They still have very many questions at wide receiver. There's too big of a question mark on this Bama team for me to think that they're going to be able to beat Texas. And I just think that Quinn Ewers has that extra push to give Texas the lead. I agree with you. I don't think Alabama's scoring 20 points. I'm going to agree with you on that one. I don't think Texas gets that high, though. I'm going to go very similar score to last year. I'm going to go 21-18. I think that Texas this year, though, gets the job done. They march into Bryant-Denny, and they get the victory over the Alabama Crimson Tide. I initially, and I probably will think by the time the kickoff happens that Alabama's going to win this game, but I'm going to say it on camera. We're going to go hook 'em horns.
That's what
We're going to go
counts.
hook 'em horns. We're going to go hook 'em horns right here with this one. And I'm going to stick with it. Texas 21-18 final. They beat Alabama, and they put we're going to hear Texas is back again, and then when they lose to Baylor in the middle of the season, everybody's just going to be like, Texas is Texas again. Something like that's going to happen. But I'm going Texas. I'm going Texas with this one. That's the game that everybody's got their eyes on, and a game that initially going into the regular season, a lot of people had eyes on it, and probably will still have eyes on this game. It's Oregon and Texas Tech. Oregon obviously just dropped 81 points last week against Portland State. Texas Tech obviously got upset on the road last week. Had to go take on Wyoming. This game, a 7 o'clock kick on Fox, but it's in Lubbock. It's Texas Tech's home opener. They are probably going to play this game at the right time this time instead of the Wyoming game where they had to wait almost 2 hours to kick that game off. But I know you're high on Texas Tech. I know I'm high on Oregon. I want to hear your thoughts first, though. What are we thinking about this Ducks versus Red Raiders matchup?
So I think that this game was a lot more fun if Wyoming didn't pull off the upset. I think the narrative is kind of about to flip on this Texas Tech team. I think a lot of people were high on them, but now, considering that they looked pretty bad in a game where they really should have just kind of taken control of, they lost against Wyoming, and I think Oregon scoring 81 points against Sacramento State this weekend. Yes, it was Sacramento State, but still scoring 81 points.
Portland State.
Portland State. Sorry. Scoring 81 points at a college football game is not easy, regardless of who you play. And I think that this Oregon defense is going to be able to completely make this game one-sided. I do think that they are going to be able to A, limit the passing game, and B, in limiting the passing game, I guess in reverse order. I don't think Texas Tech is going to be able to run the ball. If you look at their rushing stats against Wyoming, they had 59 yards from their running backs, and Tyler Shough, their quarterback, had 15 carries for 36 yards. They had about 3 yards a carry. Just not good. Yeah, 2.8. Not great. They did not crack the 100-yard mark. Tyler Shough had to throw for 338 yards 47 times. I just don't think that's going to be sustainable. It wasn't sustainable, obviously, against Wyoming. It's definitely not going to be sustainable against the Ducks of Oregon. I'm going to go and pick Oregon big. I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to win this game 45-17. I just don't think Texas Tech is going to be able to really do anything, and that's sad because that is my Big 12 winner.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate.
It is. And like you said, I think if Texas Tech gets that win over Wyoming and they don't get upset on the road in their week one matchup, this game has a lot of hype around it. But a lot of people are thinking, well, Oregon just put up 81. Oregon just did all this and that. Texas Tech just lost to Wyoming, a team that, a lot of people probably might not even have in the top 5 of the Mountain West,
Right.
But I like Oregon. I'm big on Oregon. I'm gonna say it. I love this team. I like the way that they're coached. I like the way that they utilize their entire offense. Bo Nix, I mean, he's totally spun the narrative of what type of college quarterback he is. Obviously at Auburn, a lot of people had question marks on this kid. And then he went out to Oregon, and he's just been fantastic out there for the Ducks. Last year had a great season. This year he's off to obviously a good start. And he's trying to make a Heisman campaign. And I think that those Pac-12 offenses, I think they're too much. I think that the Pac-12 offenses are going to be too much for Texas Tech. I think that Oregon gets the job done. I agree with you. I agree with your sentiments. I think it's big. I think that Texas Tech does score a bit more. I think that they figure something out that they could take moving forward, but I think Oregon just dominates this football game. I'm going to go Oregon 56-24. I think that the Ducks march into Lubbock and they take that ball game and they hang 56 up on obviously they 56 points up on Texas Tech, but now to the next game that we're going to go to, the 7:30 ABC game that we are going to talk about, and that is, it's a bit of an interesting one. This game, it was interesting last year. It was very low scoring last year, but Wisconsin and Washington State out there in Pullman. Wisconsin looked a little bit shaky in the first half. Obviously Tanner Mordecai coming in. It's first start at Wisconsin. I believe it might be actually his first start at a Power 5. I don't think he started a game while he was at Oklahoma. He obviously was the SMU transfer. He's in the new system. Luke Fickell, first game as head coach with the Badgers. They looked a little shaky in the first half, but they stuck to Wisconsin football, and they ran the football right down Buffalo's throat in the second half. And, they got a two-headed monster in the backfield with Chez Mellusi as well as Braylon Allen. They're going to be dynamic there in that backfield this year. That's just how Wisconsin's going to play. That's how Luke Fickell coaches. But Washington State, that offense, they look pretty good week one against a decently formidable opponent in Colorado State. But this one's interesting now that I'm starting to think about it a bit more. But Wisconsin's got obviously a lot of the hype this year. I know you're a bit high on Washington State. How are you that high to where you think that they can beat the Badgers, though?
So I think I had Washington State finishing 9th in my Pac-12, but it wasn't because of them being a bad team. I just think
Correct.
I think they're just a great team, not in a good spot at all. But I do think that this game is going to be extremely close. I don't know. You're going to see, I think, Wisconsin try to go back to being what they were last year. Obviously, I think they're going to try to rely on this run game quite a bit. I really liked what I saw from Lucy and Allen. Obviously, they are both fantastic players. And one thing I know about Mellusi is that Braylon Allen is more of the guy who's going to hit the hole. He's going to run hard. He is going to get you some yards. But Mellusi, he is a game-changing playmaker. I don't think people realize how fast that kid is. Mm-hmm. He is going to be something I watch for in their passing game if they do utilize him. I know Braylon Allen actually had 7 receptions, but I actually think that Mellusi could be a better option for them in the pass game just because of what he offers. After the catch. I know Braylon Allen obviously is a fantastic athlete, and there's no shame in saying that him getting, catches is a bad thing because he's obviously a great player in his own right. But I think that what you're going to see is, I think this is kind of similar to my Alabama-Texas breakdown. I think that Washington State catching a team completely flipping the page in week 2, not going from passing the ball a lot to going to a murder ball technique, but basically the complete opposite. Going from a program that was, kind of not modern at all, really, in the offensive game to completely going almost, air raid. I guess through the numbers, it doesn't really look air raid, but that's what they're going to achieve to do. And Tanner Mordecai did not have the best of week ones that he could have had. And I think he, at the end of the year, is going to be able to grow into a really good quarterback. But I think Washington State and Cam Ward at quarterback can be able to take this game. Cam Ward, 450 yards, almost 50 attempts, 3 touchdowns. One thing they are going to have to work on is the run game, because looking at the run game, they had 90 total yards of rushing, and Cam Ward had 40 of those. So that is going to be something to watch out, is if Washington State can't open up the run game. I obviously think that will help that offense, because opening up the run game just opens up the pass game. And I'm going to go ahead and take Washington State. I think this game is going to be a weird game that people are going to watch. I don't think people are going to be disappointed with either of these teams, because I think this is going to be pretty high scoring. I'm going to go ahead and say 33-29. Washington State takes it outright.
Yeah, I like your descriptions there. I do, because I initially did not have Wisconsin in my preview. I had them going 9-3 in the regular season, and all 3, I believe, of their losses were going to be in conference. But this game intrigues me. It does. It very, very much intrigues me now that I'm thinking about it, because It's a new system. It's a new system at Wisconsin. It's not what we see from the old. I think that they're going to score points though. I think that they're gonna score. We're gonna see Wisconsin score probably like 30 plus. I think they're gonna score 30 plus in this ball game. It's just, are they gonna keep up with Washington State? I'm kind of torn on this game. Obviously, I was with you. I had Washington State toward the bottom of my Pac-12, mainly because of, like we said, the really just the gauntlet that is the Pac-12 this year. But I don't know. I don't know now that I'm thinking about it, because it is a new system for Wisconsin. They didn't look the best in week 1 against Buffalo. I think that they're the one thing, like we said, that you said, was that, can Wazoo open up the run game? I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. But at the same time, I don't know if Wisconsin has a good enough secondary to where they're going to be able to stop the pass game. And, I mean, when you look at this Washington State offense, it's very comparable to many of the Big Ten East offenses when you look at it, with how high-flying that they could be. Obviously, Ohio State didn't look as high-flying as they have in the past, but Penn State, I mean, that's a good – I mean, obviously Penn State has a better run game, but still, I mean, they'd be a team that could hang a lot on Wisconsin, and I don't know. A lot of hype is around this Wisconsin team. A lot of people think that this Wisconsin team is going to return to being Wisconsin again, and being able to get, those 10-win seasons, those possible Rose Bowl berths, those Big Ten West outright championships, and challenging the Big Ten East champion in the Big Ten title game. But I think because they're switching things up. But I don't know, man. I like that two-headed monster of a backfield. I'm torn on this game too. I'm torn on the 2 games that are on ESPN networks that are at the evening slot on Saturday night. But I don't know. I think that Wisconsin, because they're going to be able to also run the football while throwing the football, I think that they're going to give up a lot to Washington State. I think they are. But because they have a run game, and because they aren't, I don't think they're going to be as one-dimensional offensively. I think Wisconsin takes the victory over Wazoo. I know that might contradict of what I was talking about in my preview for this game just a couple seconds ago, but I think Wisconsin gets it done. I think that they score, obviously, in this game. I think that they get into the 30s. I'm gonna go 32-30. I think Wisconsin wins this one. Out there in Pullman, I think they get the victory done, but obviously I think that Washington State covers this ball game. It's a very interesting game to me. It has my excitement. I'm excited for those Saturday night games, but to wrap it up,